Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe. I'm a project manager, and today we're going to talk about project management, particularly project schedule. We're going to start by taking a look at what it is, project schedule, how it's made, and why is it important. Then we're going to take a look at the steps that it takes to prepare one. We'll identify tasks, and we'll see how to develop a schedule. We'll go over an example, and then we're going to wrap it all up in a nice and neat summary where I will talk about the highlights of this presentation and the most important points that are there for you as a project manager. So, a schedule is nothing more but a timetable that breaks your project, your endeavor, by different tasks and tells you how much time are you planning to spend to do a particular task. The goal of creating a schedule is to complete your project on time, to turn your resources on and off at the right time, and really to be able to also gauge how well you're doing your project along the way. Without a schedule, it would be really easy to miss deadlines, have frustrated team members, and most certainly think that you have more resources than you actually do, and definitely miss out on the efficiency of executing the work. Also, without schedule, there will be no priorities. If you just have a laundry list of things that need to be done, they'll get done, but what needs to happen first? That's what project schedule. That's where project schedule comes in real handy. So how do we prepare a project schedule? First and foremost, you need to go to your project charter or whichever document states what it is that we will be working on, be it the project management plan, project charter, just a list of requirements from your stakeholders, and you need to define project goals. So whatever the goal is, whatever it is, this ultimate thing that we're trying to build, create, master, fix, this is step one. You need to know why are you going to take those steps to get to the final product and what those steps are going to be. And then you work backwards. So you know where you are right now, you know where you're going to be in the future, and now from knowing where you're going to be in the future, from knowing what the end goal of your project is, you need to work backwards by breaking your project down into small steps, and then of course writing them down as tasks and identifying the due dates for those. And then, of course, once you took your project, you know where you are, you know where you want to be, you broke it down into small tasks which need to be completed along the way to get the project done, then you start thinking about your resources and your stakeholders. A couple of words on project resources. It is not only material things, supplies. Now, of course, it depends on the nature of work that you are doing. If product of your labor is a physical, a tangible item, then you will have at least three types of resources. It's going to be people, finance, and materials. But if the product of your effort, if the end goal of your project is something intangible, like you're pulling in a bunch of artists to write a song, you're pulling in a bunch of computer science professionals to write a code, to develop an app, then of course time and people will be your two primary concerns, and then materials not so much. And as far as project stakeholders go, well, in project management, stakeholders are really all the people, all the persons, everyone who is involved in the project and who will be impacted by the project. So it is not only the folks that work on a project and then your client and then of course yourself as a manager. It's also people that will be tangentially involved, or they will come into your project stream at some point, they will do a little bit of work and then they will exit. Those also are stakeholders. So how do we go about identifying these small tasks, the list of steps to be taken along the way to complete your project? First, you're going to list them all and put them in the sequence, and then you will estimate the duration, and then you'll identify dependencies. And what I mean by identifying dependencies is you will determine which things have to be done first. Kind of like when building a house, you cannot really erect the walls and install the roof until after you poured your foundation and it had dried up. You cannot really start writing a song until everyone agreed that this is the style of music that we're going to use for this particular effort. That's why identifying dependencies is so crucial. And let's say we broke down our project into 3 tasks. We know that the beginning is going to be somewhere here. So we would start, then we'll complete task A, then task B, and then task C, and then the end of the project will come and we'll deliver a final product. What the importance behind estimating the duration, and again, the key word here is estimating, because you can have the most perfect schedule on the planet, but then as we probably, for those slightly more experienced project managers, if we know one thing for sure is that hardly ever will we be able to stick to the schedule, and things generally try to get in the way to undermine our efforts. So now that you have estimated the duration of each task and you have sequenced them, you can move on to the next step of developing a schedule. And this is where you come up with the big picture. You've listed all the tasks, you identified what needs to go first, second, and third. Well, how is it going to look like on a big timeline? And in order to do that and to do it better, first thing that you're going to do is you will set deadlines. So we cannot wait to start until after, let's say, February. So we would have to really get on setting up all the resources before the work starts. And then you're going to go in and you will visualize your schedule. And by visualizing schedule, I mean pulling it all into a nice table, a graph. It really depends on what kind of medium you're working in. It depends on what your customer prefers the most, what your reporting standards are. Larger companies already have all of this defined. They probably use a type of project management software that it is common, and you don't have to ever invent anything from scratch. But if all fails, and let's say you do not have a standard, you are working in a small consulting firm and you're still trying to get your bearings, set your bearings straight, and you haven't acquired a software yet, you can always default to the Gantt chart on a table. And then you will communicate it to your stakeholders. So to everyone who is involved and who will be affected by the project, you will take this table. And sorry, this is not the prettiest example, but it looks just like what we have developed previously with the blocks and arrows. We're going to do our task A, then we'll wait some time and we'll start task B, and we're going to have to complete B all the way until we can start task C. So then you will take the schedule and you will go to the stakeholders, to everyone who is involved in this project, and you will show this to them and say, hey guys, gals, here's what we're working on, here's where we're going to start, what looks like February 1st, and this is when the anticipated finish is June 30th, I believe. I think there's 30 days in June. The last day of June. You want to be done before July begins. And to you as a project manager, communicating what it is that you want to do to everyone who you believe is going to be affected is huge. This is your number one job. Your main priority is to keep everyone who needs to know the details of the project in the know and not keep them in the dark. I've seen many examples where perceived value of a project manager has diminished greatly simply because they kept a lot of information to themselves. Instead of pulling right people in the room, discussing, here's where we are, here's where we're going, and here's how long it's going to take. And so many problems would have been solved had they kept people informed. In human mind, we always, when we don't know things about something when something is new and unusual and we're not very used to it yet, we tend to assume the worst by default. So when you don't have any hidden rocks and you tell people how it is, it may or may not upset them. Maybe they have slightly different expectations than your estimated performance on this project. But when you keep them in the know, when you're constantly reassuring, telling them, here's what we're doing, you may not be doing the most perfect job in the world, but as long as everyone is clear that this is what you're doing and this is what needs to be done, and then here's where the project is in its life cycle, you're keeping people informed, you will be seen as a good project manager because you're not trying to hide anything. Of course, information that's subject to, non-disclosure, you have to abide by company policy, but things that you can share, throw it out there. Put it in front of people. Let them know. Share. Don't hold it back to yourself. So once you're done talking to your stakeholders, this should pretty much summarize your effort in the project. And now let's talk about, let's go over an example. So imagine that you're a project manager in a construction company, and your overarching goal is to construct a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home in Brooklyn, New York by July 1st, 2025. First, what we're going to do is we'll go in and we'll identify a deadline. We already have a goal. The goal is to build a house. Now the deadline is July 1st, 2025. We have a date. We know by when everything needs to be wrapped up and done, and we need to hand the keys over to the owner and or company that contracted us to build it. Then you will look at what your resources are. You're going to have your construction crew. You will have construction equipment. You're going to have legal folks that go around collecting documents, permits, forms, stamps for you, all kinds of authorizations, because you will need those along the way. Building a house is actually a lot more cumbersome legally than some might think. And then, of course, your inspectors that will show up and inspect your work along the way and when it's done to make sure that everything is built to code. And then you're going to have your funds, the amount of money that was borrowed from a bank, transferred to you from a customer or from another company. After you know what you will be working with, now you need to understand who you will be working with. You will be working with future residents because they will be affected. The construction noise, the trash that usually is there, the construction debris. And then the neighbors, the city authorities, city utilities, and so on and so forth. This is far away from being a complete list. Of course, your main focus, the person that you want to communicate your effort is your future residents and or company that contracted you to build a house, because they are the product owners. They're your ultimate client. They're your ultimate customer. And then, of course, the neighbors are going to want to let them know that you are a project manager on this project and you will be causing all kinds of ruckus and noise for the next, what looks like 5 months from our previous schedule, because you are trying to build a big, beautiful home for future residents. And then, of course, you'll need to go talk to city authorities to make sure that all the permits are submitted and they're being processed. That way you can keep your management and your client in the know on where you are and if anything is slipping, if getting certain approvals is taking longer than expected, and then try to use your soft skills as a project manager, again, to help keep these things moving. And then obtaining all the necessary permits from city utilities. So we identified the goal, we set up the deadline, we figured out what our resources are, and then what our stakeholders are. And the next step would be to we're going to list those tasks and estimate their duration. So first thing that we're going to do is we'll clear out the land, which we think is going to take about 2 weeks. Then we'll pour the foundation, and then we'll we need to let the concrete cure, and no matter how hard you're looking at it, just like a pot of boiling water, it's not going to cure any quicker. So we'll wait for it to cure for a week, and then we'll put up the walls. After the walls, we'll build a roof. After the roof, we'll do the interior and exterior finishes on the house, and then the house should be complete. Of course, I omitted a bunch of steps along the way, like putting in plumbing, electrical work, sidings, whatnot. But this would give you a nice brief overview of the steps that are usually taken to build a house. Once all of this is done, we're going to identify dependencies, which, at no surprise to anyone, you can't really build the walls until the concrete dries, and you can't really put on the wall finishes, interior and exterior, until after the roof was installed. So, yes, this is going to be a very linear, very sequential project. And this method of project management, there's a special way, a whole philosophy of managing projects like this, where all tasks are in sequence from A to B to C to D to E to F. It's called waterfall. And there's actually another video where I talk about specifically waterfall method for project management. So this is really it. This is what it takes to build, to do any project really. You're going to identify a project goal, then you will set a deadline. You'll take a look at the resources that you will be working with. Then you will talk to you'll figure out who they are first. You'll figure out who the stakeholders are, and you'll go around talking to them. Then you'll understand what are your tasks and durations on this project. You will determine the dependencies. Task B can only start after task A is complete. Task C can only start after task B is complete, and so on. And then you will visualize it in the schedule, communicate it to stakeholders. That's when you reach out. That's when you do your presentations. That's when you go out there and you tell the world, I'm the project manager and here's what I'm going to do. And then, of course, you will communicate that to all the project stakeholders. This concludes my presentation on project schedule. If you guys want to hear more about any additional topics in project management, please drop your comment in the chat. And yeah, I'll see everyone in the next video. Hope this helps. Bye-bye.